Queens, we discovered 138 languages are spoken, that there are communities from every imaginable part of the planet. And this was partly a result of an accident of history and geography, that in the 1960s they changed the immigration laws to allow more liberal access for immigrants from Latin America, Africa, Asia, etc. And JFK Airport, then Idlewild Airport, became the Ellis Island of this influx. And we're talking about millions of people coming through JFK. Well, a lot of them settled down right in the area. We'd never heard of the Flushing Remonstrance. The Flushing Remonstrance was in 1657 when Long Island was part of New Netherlands. And they were hard up for getting farm workers. And they wanted to bring in some Quakers. And they had to get the permission of Peter Stuyvesant, who was then the governor of the whole area. And Stuyvesant was a hard-lined Calvinist, and he said, absolutely no, we can't have heretical Quakers here. So the farmers, despite his refusal and harassment of them for their audacity, appealed over his head to the governors of the Dutch West India Company, and they reversed the governor's decision. And as a result, what's called the Flushing Remonstrance, which is a piece of paper, is framed in the public library, state library in Albany. It was the first articulated statement of the American commitment to religious freedom. And if you go out to Queens, you can go to the actual farmhouse where the farmers met and sketched the whole thing out. And that was among the things that we learned. And some things we learned, we had heard about faintly. Queens has a kind of way of anticipating things to come. For example, in 1945, when 46, when the United Nations was founded, there was no place for it. But there were leftover pavilions from the World's Fair of 1939-40, and that became the initial home of the United Nations. And it was there for 4 years until new quarters were found. And it was there, in Flushing also, that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was drafted, later adopted in Paris, so that the roots of the UN were also in Queens. The present president of Queens is Helen Marshall, herself of Afro-Caribbean descent. Her family came from Guyana, who was a former school teacher, a former librarian, former state assemblywoman, and for the last 5 or 6 years has been the mayor, the president of Queens. And she initiated what she calls the Marshall Plan. And her Marshall Plan included having a General Assembly in which you have the representatives of the 30 to 40 major ethnic groups in Queens meet regularly to discuss common problems. And she also has something that I think is quite ingenious, and that is she has a calendar, it's about 40 pages long, that lists every major religious and national holiday of all the communities in Queens. And I asked her, I said, well, do you ever find any that you didn't hear about? She said, well, yes. He said, there's a small Polish community right near the Brooklyn frontier. And he said, I went there the other day, it was a national day, and you know, I didn't know about them, but they were doing the polka. I was a former dancer, so she's in her 80s now. So she began dancing. So she's quite a spirit. And the other thing is libraries. The Queens Public Library is independent of the New York Public Library. It's an autonomous, borough-centered thing. And it consists of 60 branches. And we were going to the Flushing branch, which is the single busiest, in terms of usage, library branch in the United States. In fact, Queens leads the country, the library system, in terms of its uses. But it's not only the books and DVDs and CDs that circulate. Also, in every library, you'll see a whole section devoted to giving people advice on how to prepare a CV, how to cope with healthcare problems, how to become a citizen, or what the process is, how to learn English, etc. When you go to these libraries and you see the very mixture of people, you see that these are indeed what Andrew Carnegie hoped libraries would be, a lighthouse for the poor.